Join us today for this episode of Chai Chat with Zaiba Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Zaiba Hassan with Mommyingwhilemuslim. I love the new open, Joe, and I have a feeling that was Rumi's beautiful voice. So thank you so much for doing that, because, I hate hearing myself talk. Why I have a podcast, I have no idea. But I wanted to have this, take a moment to say Assalamu alaikum to everybody. We have a very special episode today, partly because of this lovely lady who will be joining me. Alvena Joffrey is here today. Assalamu alaikum, Alvena. She is Mommyingwhilemuslim, one of our brand ambassadors, and she is a newer mom. So she kind of, is the pulse on the younger moms or the moms that are just now having babies. And she's like, you know what, guys? We do not have anything about sleep training. So I had to be like, oh my God, thank you so much. We're absolutely going to do that on a Chai Chat. So Alvena, why don't you take a little bit, take a couple of moments and introduce everybody to yourself, who you are, a little bit of your mama story, because I know you're a mom of one, and you are one of our favorite people at Mommyingwhilemuslim. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Have me on the Mommyingwhilemuslim Chai Chat today. I have a son. He is, I want to say 20 months right now, and sleep training and just sleep in general, I think, is very important for moms. It's one of the things that we need a lot of just to function and be able to do everything that we do every day, like just be the heroes that we are. And moms put on a lot of roles and hats, so I think it's important that we are well rested to do that. So I think that's kind of what just drove me to have my son have a good, healthy sleep foundation. He's not like the best sleeper. I'm not going to say, yes, he sleeps 100% amazing, but it's something that I thought was important for everyone to have the knowledge too, because some moms don't even know that it's a thing and that it's even possible to sleep well. So I'm really passionate about it, and I hope that we can help you guys today. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you so much. I know you're in the trenches right now. So I have to say, I had to go back and revisit, because I am a firm believer in sleep training, as anybody who knows me knows, to the point where I will sit on the phone with my friends and walk them through the process. And if you can see, my beautiful co-host is not here today because she does not believe in sleep training. And so she was like, you do you. And that's how we're so beautifully complimentary of each other, because I'm like, girl, I need to sleep and I cannot be who I am unless I do. So my kids have to sleep. Though that having been said, I woke up at 3:00 this morning. So I am drinking a big, huge cup of chai while we're doing Chai Chat, not because my kids woke me up. Exactly. Not because my kids woke me up, but because I woke up. But the one thing I did want to say is, obviously, we are not doctors, we're not pediatricians. All the things that we're going to be presenting to you is, research that we both have exhaustively done, and plus our own experiences, obviously, as mamas in the trenches, sleep training our children. And no one particular way works for every single child. So we're just going to be kind of providing that information to you. And again, talk to your own pediatrician for all the specific help that you need for your children, because sometimes it doesn't work because your child might have some underlying issue or cause, and we obviously are not experts where that is concerned, but what we are experts in is getting our children to sleep. So we are going to get started on the, Joe, do you mind pulling up the slides, because we even put a slideshow presentation together for you guys. And Alvena, if you can go ahead and take this, my dearest.
Okay, sure. So just to start, with sleep requirements, different ages have different requirements in terms of if you're a newborn, whether you're in 2 to 6 months, 6 to 1 year. So I'm just going to give you guys like a little breakdown of what the age groups are, and then what the sleep recommendations in terms of hours are. So it's very important for newborns that are from that 0 to 2 month age group to get about 16 to 18 hours, and then have about 45 hours at a time in a day. And then for babies that are from the 2 to 6 month age group, they should be getting about 14 to 16 hours at night. And older babies that are like from 6 months to 1 year old, they get down a little less to 14 hours, and then their naps during the day start to lengthen out. Toddlers, that's where my son is right now. So between the 1 to 3 years old, they're getting about 10 to 13 hours ideally at night. And then to the older children that are in preschool, 3 to 5 years, they should be getting about 10 to 12 hours of sleep, as well as school-age children that are 5 to 10 years old. They should also be getting 10 to 12 hours. And then we move forward to the school-age children that are about 6 to 13 years old. They should be getting 9 to 11 hours of sleep. And then the adolescents, that is about 4 to 18 years old, they should be getting 8 to 10. And along with adults as ourselves, should be getting about 8 hours of sleep a day. So you might think this is a lot of sleep, but it's very important for these kids to be getting their required amounts of sleep, because you will notice that one day if your child doesn't sleep, or you yourself don't sleep that much, it starts to affect you the next day. So getting those recommended hours of sleep is very important for your brain, for the development and everything. It's very crucial.
And I'm telling you right now, like I tell people all the time, even before COVID, when I would go out for girls' night outs and things and that, I'm like, listen, I leave you people at 9, and I leave you at 9 because I love you, but nothing is worth losing my sleep over, because it really affects me. It affects my children. I have to say my younger two are 7 and 9, and they are literally still sleeping 11 to 12 hours per night.
Yeah,
and
same
if
with
they
my little
don't
guy.
get that, they are grumpy as all get out, and including my teenagers. They love to sleep. They love to protect their sleep, and partially it's because we started these good sleep habits from a very early age, and all of us do a good job in protecting our sleep.
And it's so important to have a healthy relationship with sleep rather than a negative one, because once it's negative, like you don't really want to sleep, or you have that fear of like missing out on things. But when you know how beneficial it is for you, how you just feel, how your body feels when you get that right amount of sleep, it's just amazing. Like you want to go to bed at the right time, or like my little guy, he'll tell us when he's tired and he's ready to go to bed. So he has a good, healthy relationship with sleeping.
And so right now you're at the 20 months. So I'm assuming you're breaking down your hours of sleep into 2 naps, right? One is probably in the morning still, and one's in the afternoon, or have you consolidated to one afternoon nap now?
We consolidated to one long nap. Yeah. So that's been nice for us.
And that's the problem, is obviously when you're looking at some of these sleep requirements for the younger ages, I think it's from 0 to 9 months, if I remember, it's broken down into 3 naps. It's 2 longer naps, 1 short nap. And around 9 to 12 months, they start transitioning out of that evening nap, where they'll have 2 longer naps, and then you'll put them to bed a little bit earlier. So these sleep requirements, obviously for the younger age group, until about 24 to 36 months, if I remember correctly, is broken down into 1, 2, 3 naps per day, in order to get that full amount of sleep, plus their overnight sleep as well. So Joe, we're going to go to that next page. Okay, while he switches, you go ahead. What were you saying, Alvena?
I was just saying that one kid, one kid is not always going to be, it's not going to be the same for every single child, where if you're ready to drop a nap, like maybe a child that's the same age as your baby, he's taking 3 naps, and like your daughter might be taking 2 naps. So it's like, even though they're the same age, it just depends when they're ready to drop that nap. And you'll know due to the signs that they're ready to move forward to like maybe 2 naps or 1 nap. And I knew my son was ready for 1 nap at that point then.
Exactly. And to your point, if you are sleep training, part of the beauty of sleep training is that we'll get to this a little bit later, is that you're recognizing your own child's cues, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So then you know what's going to work for your child, because you're going to become an expert in your own child's sleep. So that's the beauty of sleep training that I know a lot of people don't want to talk about, but the reality is your life becomes a little bit more predictable. But what we're going to talk about right now is what happens when the child and a parent do not have adequate sleep. And like right now, I'm not lying. I woke up at 3 o'clock, and I am fantasizing about falling asleep right now. So today is the perfect day to be talking about adequate sleep because I can't wait to go to bed tonight. But some of the things that a lot of your kids you'll notice, and I'll have to say and the reason why I'm such an advocate is my oldest son. I love him to death. This is not a joke. Anybody that knows me at that time, this literally, he had to be in my arms to sleep until he was almost 3 years old. And I could not do it anymore. It was terrible. It was rough. It was terrible. So because of that, I became such an advocate for sleep training because I'm telling you some of the symptoms that we're going to be talking about right now, like he was grumpy, he was constantly sullen. I was sullen and depressed, and it affects your cognition. They have a hard time focusing, they have a hard time focusing. They're irritable, they're grumpy, a lot of time their mental stimulation, they're lacking in that everyday motivation. Because think about it, when you're tired, doesn't it feel kind of like you're walking through molasses? And that's kind of what's happening with these kids. And they're constantly irritable. There would be no time of the day where I couldn't guarantee he would be in a good mood, if that makes sense. He was constantly grumpy, a little bit sullen. And honestly, I was having severe postpartum, and we talk about that on our podcast a lot. And part of the sleep deprivation for mothers is increase in postpartum depression, postpartum disorder, because it literally is like torturous. Now, Alvena, like, did you have any of these types of signs while you were, in the trenches of sleep deprivation? Like, it's a terrible, terrible thing to have to go through.
Right. So like when we do go through regressions, which do happen like from time to time, so like I will feel like physically that my body is aching when I'm waking up in the morning. I'm tired. Like it's tough for me to just start my day versus the nights that I get like a good night of sleep. I'm able to wake up like 6, 7 a.m. And when my son slept well, when I've slept well, it just gives us more energy, more motivation to go through the day seamlessly rather than just having that really broken sleep at night. And I think like even for new moms, it's very important for them to start at that time because it's not too early. Like if you do that from the beginning, you will get good, healthy sleep for you and your child from like very early on. So I just felt like emotional through the days when I didn't have like a good sleep through the night physically. Just everything started to get very blurry for me, and that's when things would go downhill. So it's very important.
And honestly, like if you don't start any of these things, and we're going to talk about the age requirements and recommendations that pediatricians do actually put forward. Don't start anything. I always say that 6 to 12 week period after a baby is born, it's like the fourth trimester. Let's just be real. You're trying to figure it out. You're healing. The baby's healing. Do whatever you need to do to survive during that fourth trimester period. Sleep training should not be on your list. So do not even think about it, because honestly, everybody is in survival mode. And I want to tell everybody, like, this is not something that you do, from the beginning. You're healing.
Yeah, you need to be in a good, like,
what they say, sleep with the baby. Exactly, to deal with that baby. Now, let me ask you this, like when you had just had the baby, I don't know about you, but like I had a hard time connecting with my oldest, and partly because I was, I'm going to admit it, and I'm saying this right now, I was angry. I was angry about how my life drastically changed. I was angry that I couldn't go to bed when I wanted to go to bed. I was angry that I couldn't, because his moods were so sporadic. Because obviously now looking back, he was sleep deprived, poor child. That was my mistake.
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere because I couldn't guarantee he wouldn't lose his cool. So for me, that really aided a lot in my postpartum depression after my first one. Did you have anything like that, Alvena, or were you one of the lucky ones that was kind of like, okay, I can handle this?
No, it definitely wasn't. I had a very rough delivery and very unexpected situation. So that kind of like just added to everything. So I had a very negative, just the foot that I stepped in was just like very negative into motherhood. And then on top of that, like I didn't know what was going on,
Mhm.
and it was tough for me. And basically regarding sleep training and about all of this knowledge about sleep, I had none of it to like stepping into it. And if I
At
knew
that
it, I
point.
would have been so happy. But like I discovered it when I was in like the rough. Like it was really tough for me, and I was like, I can't take this
Because
anymore.
at that point
So
you were
that's when I started
desperate.
looking up all these.
Right, exactly, where you're just,
Right,
like,
I was,
desperate at
yeah.
that point, and you're, like
I was
or
like, I
you're
will
on
do
the blogs and
anything.
the
I
reading, and
will,
you're like, "Oh my
yeah,
god." Exactly.
I will pay any amount of money to like just
I
sleep.
remember
Like
that.
that's all I wanted. So it was really tough. But then
Like,
once
the
I did get
fantasy
into
of,
this
like,
world of sleep,
"Oh."
yeah, that was me. So like when I got this info, I was like, this is gold. Like everybody needs to know this. Every mom. I read a lot of parenting books before I had my son, and it was like none of this stuff was covered in it. I don't know if I wasn't reading the right things, or I was just kind of like looking at what to pack in my hospital bag, which is very important too. But this is like practical.
Yes.
Everybody needs it.
It's like when people spend months and months and months planning a wedding, but then don't prepare you for the
Hmm.
marriage. And you're like, what
Yeah,
did I just walk into?
exactly.
You're like, you prep and you're all
Yeah,
excited. And trust me, I was one of those pre moms that I was like, I will never do this. I will never do that. And I did everything I said I would never do with my first one. So
yeah,
that just goes to show you, like, never say never. And everybody's doing the
yeah,
best that they can. But now we're going to
for
talk about
sure.
some tried and true methods that actually have worked. Alvena, I'm going to have you get started with that.
Sure. So there's a few different methods that can work with you. It depends on like what age range your child is in. The first one I wanted to discuss was fading. There's the pick up put down method, and we'll go in detail about all of them. I just want to list them out for you guys first. There's the chair sleep training, controlled crying, which is also known as Ferber. An extinction sleep training, and that's as like basically known as cry it out. With fading, it's a gentler method. You can do it when your kid is like about 6 to 8 weeks old, the younger ones, and the same with pick up, put down. And then as they get older, you can start doing the chair sleep training method. And once again, we'll go in detail about all of them. And then there's the controlled crying, which is Ferber, and that's when they're at like 4 to 6 months, when they kind of have their own rhythm of sleep and they're not feeding off of mom's sleep anymore. And then there's the extinction sleep training, which is for older children, or when like all else totally fails and you got to let them just completely cry it out.
So, and the one thing that I found, and the piece of advice that seemed to work with all of my babies, and I don't know if this was true for you, Alvena, is that once they hit that 10, and mine were skinny little Indian babies, and I love them, but I never had a chubby baby. But once mine, I mean, they're the cute little, I had the long and
Yeah.
lean, skinny babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, once they hit that 10-pound mark, then they
Mm-hmm.
kind of say, once you hit that 10-pound mark, the ability to drop a feed. And for the record, I exclusively breastfed my kids until they were 7 or 8 months. So a lot of people think that that's
Oh, okay.
another misnomer. I'd like to point out that a lot of
Oh
people
no,
think
yeah,
that when you're
definitely not.
breastfeeding, that you can't do this, and that's not true. My kids did not get
Yeah.
a drop of solid food or formula till they were like 7 or 8 months old. And other than my
Yeah.
first, which of course he was my learning, he always says he was my guinea pig. But all of them were
So
able to
mine is
sleep
my
through the
guinea
night.
pig right now.
And exactly. So the fact that you're
Yeah.
already 100% better than where I was, Alvena. So the fact that you're even
Oh my god.
talking about this is kind of amazing, because I had no clue. And look at how cute these babies are. I had no clue of what I was doing. And the other thing too is I really want to point out, sleeping through the night does not mean 12, 13 hours at that age. It
Mm-hmm.
means a block of 4, a block of 5, a block of 6 hours if you're lucky. So remember that too. So we're not talking about your baby is sleeping from 7 to 7. If they are, that's a blessing for you. But it's
Oh
really
yes,
a
that's
chunk of
amazing.
time, a block of 4 hours, a block of 5 hours. And quite frankly, when you're waking up every 90 minutes, a 4-hour stretch feels like heaven. So I wanted to point out that
That's
distinction.
amazing. Yeah.
So Alvena, could you tell us a little bit about the pick up, put down method? Because that is the more gentler of the approaches.
Yeah. Sure. So if just let me know if I'm not correct about the pick up, put down. I'm more familiar with Ferber, but so since it's more gentler, you go into the room and
If you
you're
wanted
able
to
to
talk about
console your
Ferber,
baby. Yeah, you want to do pick up, put down? I'll
did
do
you want to
Ferber
talk
because
about
that's
Ferber?
I'm pretty.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
so
do.
I have my baby. Can you guys see my baby? This is my only baby
Oh.
doll. So essentially, the pick up, put down is recognizing when your child is starting to show signs of drowsiness. And we're going to be talking about that after we talk about this. And you pick them up and then you can't see them. Then you put them down and you pat them and you walk away. A lot of the times they'll start fussing, then you pick them up and put them down and walk away. And you do this, I think, for about, at least from the books from the past, for about an hour. But it doesn't take that long, to be honest with you. And because they're young enough, they want to learn how to go back to sleep. That's the truth of it. So you pick them up, put them down, walk out. And the gentler methods tend to take about 7 to 8 days to fully work. Or in my case of my fourth, I couldn't get to him fast enough because I was taking care of 3 other babies that by the time I ran upstairs, he had put himself to sleep. That happens too, which is why people do have the multiple kids, because those poor kids learn how to take care of themselves. But by the time I would get to him, the poor kid would already be asleep. And I'm like, darn, I would have to pick him up. But it's the picking up, putting down, picking up, putting down. It's a little bit more labor intensive for the mom. But the reality of the situation is if you can't really bear your child crying, or you're just like, I'm not quite sure, this is kind of like the introduction, the approach to kind of start the sleep training process. This, by the way, can work for older kids too, if you don't want to do the extension or the Ferber method. And so the next one that's called pick up, put down. The next one is fading, where eventually there's literally no tears, no crying, or very little crying. And this is more for the parent or the mother that really is like, I will not do this, but I do want to try it. And essentially you are putting your child to sleep is what it is. Putting him to sleep, putting the baby down, and then you're just spending less and less time physically rocking and putting the baby down. And this works best in that 6 to 8 the 6 to 8 week period, when you're recognizing, at that point you are starting to recognize the mother the baby's cues, and then you can kind of do that. And that the beauty of this method is, over time, the baby will rely on you less and less, if that makes sense. And there really is very little crying, if at all, if you catch that window earlier. So Alvena, do you mind talking about the chair sleep training method? This is for the older child, and the Ferber, which it sounds like is what you did.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to start by saying that kids are very smart. So if you are consistent with something, it's very important for the parent themselves to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, the kid doesn't know, like, okay, if I cry, they'll come pick me up one day, but the next day they might not come pick me up. Or, the kid needs to know. They thrive off of routine. So it's very important for us to be consistent as the parent. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. With Ferber method, that's what I did with my son, and my husband and I did it. And so that's more, yeah, he was a huge part of this. I can't even say I did it. I'm screaming. So with Ferber, it's more of interval check-ins. It's not just leave them in the room and indefinitely let them cry. You go in and we did 5, 10, and 15-minute intervals. So we put him down and we let him in the room 5 minutes himself in his crib, and we let him know, like, it's time for bed. And we had a routine with him, and sorry, I think can you guys hear me crying in the back? It's going like pretty crazy. But
Oh, you can
so
pick
we had
him
a
up,
routine before.
because we here at Mommy, we are
Yeah.
totally fine with babies coming in. So go,
Okay.
if you need to go pick him
He's
up,
with Dad right now, so
he can join.
he's hanging out with Dad.
Okay.
Okay. So you guys might have to bear all the screaming in the back. But anyway, so we started with a routine. That way he knew what was coming, and you should do the same with your child so that they can thrive off of this. Like, okay, I know this is what comes next. And so they're not like really in fear, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So we built this routine where we would change his diaper, change his clothes, and then we would read him a book, read him a dua before he goes to bed, and we put him down in his crib and we walked out of the room. So 5 minutes pass. And if he's still crying, then we checked on him. We just went in for a few seconds, consoled him. And that way the kid just knows that my parent is here for me. But we're setting these boundaries for them that they're not going to take us out of the crib. And that way they just know this is what's going to happen. And you're just being firm. That way they can fall asleep themselves. So then 5 minutes, then 10 minutes pass. And then ultimately you go in at 15 minutes if they're still crying at this point. But typically I feel like they tend to fall asleep fast. After that, they learn really fast. It took my little guy like 2 days maybe, and really like moms are like, oh my God, sleep training, it really scares them, but it's so fast. Kids are amazing. Like their brains work really fast, so they know what's going on. And we did this around like 5 months, I want to say, when he was able to sleep through the night fully, like when we knew he didn't have to eat through the night. And also one more thing I wanted to mention was I gradually weaned off.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I gradually weaned off milk. So I was nursing him. Yeah. I'm still nursing him actually, but we're down to one feed now. But I just lessened the time. I didn't give a bottle, so I wasn't sure how many ounces, but if you are giving your baby a bottle, you can lessen the ounce each night. And so I went in at certain times. I think I went in at 10:30 and 3:30 for like 2 to 3 nights. And I just lessened the amount of minutes that I would do it. So if you're doing a bottle, you can lessen the ounces and just discuss with your doctor, obviously, as well, if they're ready to not eat through the night.
Exactly. If they're ready to drop, and around 4 months was when my doctor essentially said, like I did too. I don't know if you did this. I did the dream feed. So the dream feed, I would kind of nurse them while they were sleeping before I went to bed as a way to kind of extend that block of time. So that's the other thing too that a lot of people can do around that 9:30 my time, 10:30 for other normal people, where I would go and dream to kind of give them that couple of extra ounces before they would go to bed. Because at some point they stop
and just stretches them longer.
The night. It's the poopy diaper. A little bit longer. So and again, I loved what you said. Always, when you go to your doctor, talk to them about this. Is now a good time to start this process? They'll know more about whether or not you do, and that you can. So the last one is probably the most harsh, and that's the one, sadly, I had to do with my older one because he was almost 3. No, he was 2.5 because it was right before his sister was born, and I was pregnant with his sister, and I was like, I cannot have 2 babies like sleeping in bed with me. Anybody that knew me at that time, and actually if she's watching right now, it was my friend Nadia, who was like, girl, you need to sleep. I don't care what you're saying. And honestly, you have to get your spouse involved because the mom can't handle the crying. And I had to do the cry it out. Like I just had to. And I know a lot of people might judge me, but the reality of the situation is he was a full-on talker and he could not even take a nap without me lying down with him, which of course now as a teenager, when I come in the room, he rolls his eyes. So I wish I would have enjoyed that sleeping time with him a little bit more, but he'll be embarrassed if I said that out loud. But what I had to do was literally decide, pick a weekend because you are going to be sleep deprived, and be like, this is what I'm doing. And I put him to bed. We did our routine. We'll talk about the importance of routines in a little bit. I called this friend. She was my sleep guru, and I love her to death. If she's watching, thank you for this. And she's like, let's go to a movie, because she knew I couldn't handle listening to him cry. My poor husband, we were in a teeny tiny apartment, had to deal with this. And I'm telling you, girl, he cried for 3.5 hours straight, screaming my name. Fell asleep. I'm still remembering this. Can you see how traumatized I am? Fell asleep.
Yeah.
The crib, the side of the crib slumped over. but he slept
Oh
through the night.
no. Yeah.
It was terrible, and that was
The,
my mistake, but let me tell you, it took about a week to get the nighttime together, and then we focused on the naps, and
mm-hmm.
he became a different person. It was night
Right.
and day, his personality, how he
Mm-hmm.
interacted, how he felt, and the more I got to know him, I was like, "Oh my god, this could have been
Mm-hmm.
you the entire time."
Yeah.
But that was
Yeah.
my mistake, that I had to get to that point and have him literally holding the crib, crying
Mm-hmm.
for me,
Yeah.
but now he's one of my best sleepers. He does not hate me, at least not for the sleep reasons. He
Mm-hmm.
hates me for, like, talking to him
Right.
sideways. But so when people are like, they're gonna remember this, that doesn't happen,
No, they
because quite
don't.
frankly,
Yeah,
I
they
gave him the
don't.
gift of learning how to sleep by himself.
For sure. I think it's like very important because some moms are just like, I can't do it. I don't have the heart to. But like, honestly, you're doing your child, yourself, everyone a favor. It just depends what method you want to do. Not everyone is okay with like just full on cry it out. And there are gentler methods. There's lots of ways to take this approach. And I think with sleep training, everyone just gets very scared of the word, like I can't do it. And it's a lot of but then people will come in, they'll be like, I can't sleep. And I'm like, well, you need to do this. Like, this is gold. Like, you need this in your life. And then, sorry, just building off of one more
Pretty
thing you
much
said, you
takes a
talked
weekend.
about,
I would say,
yeah, sorry, you were saying that focused on night
yeah.
sleep first. So first, I would give any advice to anyone is do night sleep first because the brain processes nights versus naps differently. So focus on nights first. Once you get solid nights, then tackle the naps.
Yes. And the whole process will probably take 2 to 3 weeks. So if you know that,
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
there's going to be times when they're sick, and around 4 months there's a regression. Whenever there's a huge cognitive leap
Mm-hmm.
of some sort, or they're starting to walk, or they're starting to crawl, when they have any kind of life um, excitement or life milestone, you are going to see a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of a regression in sleep. But just know, if you stick to the patterns and keep with the
Oh yeah.
consistency, and they know you mean business, it'll be a day or two and then you'll be back to normal. So know that ahead of time. And
Mm-hmm.
if you actually do the sleep training properly, like, and if you get it done ahead of time, the reality of the situation is there's not going to be that much sleep training, and part of that is going to be the sleep windows and recognizing when your child needs to go to sleep. So that is our next slide, and this is very important part of figuring out when the naps are going to be, because now we have
Mm-hmm.
tackled the nighttime. Now it's going to be the daytime sleep habits, and part of that is going to be recognizing the sleep cues and the sleep windows during the day, so you can have a more predictable time of putting your child to sleep. So, Alvena, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So wake windows are just a fancy name for how long your baby should be awake. So for 0 to 3 months, ideally your baby should be awake for about 40 to 90 minutes at a time. And then once that period is over, you put your baby down for a nap and then they just wake back up and you reset and you do that through the day until it's nighttime and then you go bed for night. So as we move forward, then the 4 to 6 months, it's going to be about 1.5 to 2.5 hours. And you'll see obviously with the 4 to 6 month, that's a pretty large range. But if your child's at the 4 month mark, they'll probably be only awake for an hour and a half versus when they grow a little older and they're like closer to the 6 month mark, they'll be able to stay awake for 2.5 hours. About when they're in that 6 to 8, their wake window stretches out to about 2.5 to 3 hours. And then when they're about 8 to 13 months, yes, 8 to 13 months is about 2.5 to 4 hours. So these wake windows just keep stretching a little longer and longer because your baby is able to stay awake longer without getting cranky. And you fill that time with different activities, lots of outdoor lighting, like just natural light, so that they're energized. You fill it with activities, music or sound or noise or something, and you start get when they're like at that 4 to 5. It depends when you start feeding them. Then they start having like food, and so that time frame gets filled with different activities as they get older, because they're able to stay awake longer. So then in the 13 to 18 month period, they're about at the 4.5 to 6 hours max before they need to take a nap. So like my son is in that, sorry, he's not in that age group. He's in the next age group, which is 18 to 3 years old. They're awake for about 5 to 6 hours. So that would basically be that, meaning that they're taking only one nap through the day. So say they wake up at like 7 a.m., they'll go down 5 hours to 6 hours after that, and then they take like one chunk of a nap, which is maybe anywhere ranging from 2 to 3 hours ideally, and then they're awake and for another 5 hours. You can see if your child's getting cranky about 4.5 hours. You could probably put them to bed at that point. It just depends if you had a tiring day. And we're not rigid with anything. You have to be flexible. Like one day, if they had a car nap, you can put them to bed earlier. If they had just like an on-the-go nap or it wasn't a great nap, go ahead and put them to bed earlier. Like they are tired, so they didn't get that restorative sleep during the nap. Put them to bed early, and that's doing them a favor and yourself, I guess.
And honestly, I found, I don't know if you did this, Alvena, the earlier I put my kids to bed, the longer they would actually sleep in the morning. So if I would put them to
For
bed
sure.
on the younger side, 6:30, and I remember people thinking I was crazy because I didn't go anywhere.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
the truth
yes.
of it. I was a slave to their naps. And then everyone's like, why do you do this? And I'm like, do you want my crazy child at your house screaming and crying?
Yeah.
Or do you want a peaceful day? So trust me, I'm doing you a favor by not showing up with a cranky child. And it just wasn't fun for anybody. But they start,
Yes,
like if
for
they
sure.
miss their afternoon nap, or to your point, you're sleeping on the go, I would definitely put them down for a nap. But what this kind of looks like is if your child wakes up, let's say at 7, that means you're looking for those sleep windows, that's those sleep cues around that 8:30 time to put them down for their first nap. And honestly, if you catch those windows, that's the key. When you watch your child and you catch the windows, and having the knowledge is power, you don't ever have to do any kind of crying it out. I mean, that's the truth.
Right.
My first one was crazy, but with Zara, by the time my Zara came around, I knew it right away. That girl was sleeping 6 hours by the time she was 3 months old. Like I would nurse her
That's
at
amazing.
9. She would take a quick feed at 3. And because I was able to recognize the sleep cues, I had just gone through the process with her older brother. And obviously with each subsequent child, you'd become more confident in your mothering skills.
Of
That
course.
is what happens.
Of course.
And you're kind of like, you know, their cries don't really do much to you at that point. So you're just like, you're going to be fine. It's total. And you understand, you start recognizing what their cries actually sound like. So that's the beauty. So you'll know if they wake up in the middle of the night, if it's just a cranky cry, or if it's a, I really need you to come. So this is not us saying ignore them when they're crying. This is us saying you're going to have the confidence. You're going to have the wherewithal to be like, okay, I understand what my baby, because it's a conversation they're having with you, and you'll be able to recognize those cues and be able to respond accordingly. And so the last thing is like the importance of a bedtime routine. You are in that phase right now. So do you want to talk a little bit about what's a good bedtime routine for your age group and what you yourself are doing?
Sure, yeah. So just having a routine is really important so that your child can like thrive off of what's happening next. Like a routine throughout the day is very important. And I would say bedtime routine is really important too. Because like now my son will just know right off the bat, like he ate dinner, he's gonna like play with his toys a little bit, and he just knows, like he calls it Ninu when it's like nighttime. He's like Ninu. So he's like ready to go to bed, and he'll go upstairs. Yeah. So with the bedtime routine, it's very like you can literally do whatever you want, whatever is good for your family. We don't give baths at night, like we just do it during the day because it gets super messy, but you're open to like giving a bath at night, giving them a massage, like sometimes throw like your towel in the dryer, like a hot towel, wrap them up and get them like very cozy, ready to just go to bed, read them a book. You can play music, read a dua, you can put like, you obviously you're gonna put their pajamas on, and we turn on the sound machine. So for us it's like a very we do diaper and then clothes change into pajamas, and then we do a book, and now we've actually gotten dad into the nighttime routine. I weaned him off of his nighttime feed. So now my husband's name is Akbar. So now Akbar is the one who's putting him to bed. So he'll sit in the rocking chair. He'll just rock him, read a book, and then so we did fading with that method as well too, because we noticed that when I completely was out of the scene, he freaked out. He was like, "Mama, mama." So we did a very gradual method where I basically like Akbar was just in the room next to us on in the chair, and then I like transitioned my son into Akbar's lap, and then Akbar started putting him down, and then I like day by day I inched out of the room until I was like completely out of the room, and until I'm completely out of the scene. So now my husband does bedtime completely, thank God. So, but yes, it's very important for everybody to have a sleep routine, so that if you are changing environments, like say you're going to your parents' house, your in-laws' house, if you're going on vacation, your child is not in the same bed per se, but they know what's coming next. Like they know, okay, I'm expecting like this is my nighttime routine. I'm going to go to bed, so they feel safe in another environment.
That's exactly right. And the truth of the matter is the routines help them. They need routines throughout the day. It helps them. They
Right.
have very little control in their life, right? So that's why,
Mm-hmm.
the children tend to quote unquote act up, get upset. It's because they themselves have somebody else controlling every aspect of their life. Can you imagine
Right.
putting yourself in that position? So if you can show them a little bit of predictability, have them be in charge of their routine. That's the other suggestion. I could be like,
Mm-hmm.
let them pick the book, let them sing
For sure.
turn on
Yeah.
the night night. We call it night night. We have the white noise.
Okay.
My teenagers still do white noise, by the way. And so we
Oh,
travel
nice.
with our
Okay.
white noise machines. I'm not even going to pretend
So,
like we
yeah. So do
don't. So we
we.
have one of those portable ones. We stick it in our suitcase. And so what people are like,
Yeah.
aren't you afraid they're going to get dependent on it? I'm like, they're sleeping. We're
Yeah.
good. But the one
Yeah.
thing people have to know is
Yeah.
obviously when they get older, there are going to still have some kind of nighttime issues. And I want people
Mm-hmm.
to know that. So in our household, we found between 6 and 8, there is another cognitive leap that happens. And my kids, and you'll see this
Okay.
with your son too, Alvena, they start getting a
Okay.
little bit of anxiety. And what happens is their cognition
Mm.
of the world is bigger than themselves, right? Not just, and they start thinking about everything. It's like, I have to, you're leaving, something can happen to you. And they understand that they're just one small part in the larger world. So I found with all of my kids at
Mm-hmm.
some point, they actually needed to come back into my room. And honestly, I'm not opposed to, accepting your kids in your room. This is what people don't understand, and providing a safe space and
Mm-hmm.
providing security. My big thing was you always have to start off in your room. And if you come into my
Uh-huh.
room, don't wake me up. That's my biggest thing because I know that the kids are going to go through a stage where
Right.
they're going to need that comfort. They have a bad dream. They need to make sure that you're there. And so this is not me saying ignore them, lock them in the room, close the door. No. My
Yeah,
kids
no, definitely not.
I mean, everybody knows this. I talk about it. They still come into my room at night and they still sleep with me. But what we've done is provided a designated space for them to go to
Okay.
in the middle of the night. They have a pillow, they have a blanket. That is something that is an alternative for older kids because the reality of the situation is we still want them to feel safe. We still want them to feel
Mm-hmm.
secure. And this is a great compromise that we've developed that's worked for all of my kids at every stage. And sometimes, by the way, the teenagers still come in because they need
Yeah,
to. And I never, ever turn them away. But my
that's
only
awesome.
thing is come in quietly because I'm a light sleeper, but you can come in
Mm-hmm.
at any point and sleep. And we have a little space in our room that we designate for them. So this is not
Okay.
us saying ignore your kids, don't fulfill their emotional needs, recognize that they're going to come
Mm-hmm.
stages in their life where they're still going to need to know that you're in the background, and it's perfectly
Mm-hmm.
okay. So that's the one thing I did want
Right.
to say. Like, I'm a big advocate in sleep training, but I'm also like, you'll know when your kids need you. I'm not sleeping in your bed. I'm too old for that. I will wake up with a backache. But you can come to my room and sleep on my couch anytime you need comfort. So that's the one thing I did want to point out. But
That's great.
I mean, we could talk about this all day, but what are some of the
I know.
resources that are that people can kind of like look at in case they need some further advice?
Sure. So there's lots of books out there, and now, aside from books as well, there's a lot of blogs, there's a lot of Instagram accounts, there's lots of Facebook
Yes.
groups. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to access. And it's something that really worked for me was takingcareofbabies.com. She's a sleep trainer. Her name is Kara. And there's many other sleep trainers out there that you can either, they have lots of information just that you can read up on. I read up a lot on, and I also did take her course. But aside from just reading like the books that we do have a list of on the slide that you can access as well, you can go on several websites. Just be sure that this is what's working for your family. You can take all the information and kind of like tailor the plan to you. And just different sleep trainers have different like courses where maybe the extinction method is not going to work for you, so you won't use that resource. Just be careful with what resources you're using. Don't feel forced to use a certain method. Just do what's comfortable for you and your family, what works in your home and your space. If you have like, I know a lot of people don't have their own space. Maybe you live with your parents, with your in-laws, and so be mindful that there's going to be these interferences. And so tailor your plan to your family, not that, Alvena is doing this or Zaiba is doing this, like I got to do what they're doing, but do what works for you and use these resources that are like the books that are out there, the blogs that are out there. And we have the books listed. We have the website listed that I highly suggest you guys check out. Lots of Instagram accounts. You can simply just search up sleep trainers and, you can go from there. It's a huge world. It's gold, all of it.
And what we did do is provide, and if anybody wants to DM us and wants some of the resources, we're happy to send this slideshow to you. We also have in here for the older children, like a little sleep chart, because they need incentives. Our biggest thing was putting an electronic clock so they could see the numbers. And I'm like, do not come out of this room until you see a 7 handle. Once you see the 7 handle, you're welcome to come out. So that's something you can do with older children too, and create an incentive, do some, positive reinforcement. And again, our biggest thing was always saying, you can start off in your room. And then if you need mommy or daddy, you can come in the middle of the night and create a safe space. But again, it has to work with your family. To your point, if you're living with an extended family, they all kind of have to be on the same page, because what you don't want is to start the sleep training and then somebody kind of undermines you or doesn't quite, the kids can feel that. But the reality of the situation is you can always come to our group at Mommyingwhilemuslim as well. There's hundreds of thousands of mamas now. That's the beauty. We've grown so much. So post your question. We're happy to help you however we can. DM us. And like Alvena said, there are lots of books, but if you don't have the time or you're too sleep deprived to read them, feel free to take this slideshow and go from there. I know I'm going to be going to sleep and getting a good night's sleep tonight, Alvena. I don't know about you.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm hoping that this was helpful to you all. And thank you so much for coming to this special episode of Chai Chat. What we're going to do is, again, we want to help tailor to some of our newer moms in our community. Thanks to Alvena for pointing it out. And so the first Thursday of every month, we are going to be tailoring a Chai Chat just for you. So if you have any interests or concerns that you would like us to, Alvena and myself, to talk about with you, we're happy. We take suggestions all the time. But until next time, everybody, we're hoping and praying for you to have a good night's sleep and hug your babies, because one day you will be rocking them to sleep and feeling overwhelmed. And one day they're leaving for college. And that's the truth of it. In a blink of an eye, I had a nightmare. I'm not even joking. The other day that I was still holding my oldest, and he was so teeny tiny. And I literally went into his room in the middle of the night, like that book, I love you forever, I like you, like a creeper. I'm crawling into his room. And he was like, what the heck is wrong with you, mama? And I was like, you're a baby. I can't believe you're not a baby. So it sucks, ladies. The days are so long. I get it. You're in the trenches, but the years are so short. So enjoy those quiet moments in the night, because one day they will not be there. So until then, have a good night, everybody, and assalamu alaikum. And thank you for joining us today on Momming While Muslim.